So we left off at step 3. The bone is going to release calcium that was stored in the bone into the bloodstream. So now we're going to go on to step 4. This is going to normalize. This is going to normalize the blood calcium level. And now step 5, we are going to turn off PTH secretion, because you don't want all your calcium leaving your bones. Once the problem has been addressed, we're going to turn off PTH secretion. Hopefully in a normal human being, this is what's going to happen. Okay, now for some histology for the thyroid gland. You will see, many circles put together. And here's one of those circles I'm about to draw right now. It'll be filled on the inside with this lighter stained tissue covered by this epithelium. So we can expect to see nuclei for this epithelium. Okay, let me take one of these guys, and you can expect to see a few of them. Oops, what is that? This is, okay. Excuse me. All right, try that again. Gonna take one of these guys, copy it. There we go. So you will see something like this. Okay, cool. Oops. Okay. So this epithelium here, we call this, let's first start with the inside. This tissue here, this substance, this is called the colloid. This is where the hormones are made. And this epithelium, we call this follicular epithelium. And then put these two together, so one complete set of colloid and follicular epithelium, we call this a follicle. So follicular epithelium covers the entire thing, which is a follicle. So here is, on the left side, this is all, so let's see, this is colloid, 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 all surrounded by follicular epithelium, Fe. So there's follicular epithelium tissue. There's some right there. If you put those two together, that gives you a follicle. Everything else on the right side that doesn't look like everything on the left side, this is all parathyroid tissue. This is all parathyroid. So basically, light pink circles, which should cover most of the slide, would be thyroid. Everything else, which it might be in a small secluded section on its own, this is all parathyroid. And here's another image of that, just the thyroid. Okay, now for the adrenal gland. Again, they sit on top of your kidneys. This here would be my left kidney. Sitting on top of it, this is my adrenal gland. So this would here be my, let me put this elsewhere. This is my left adrenal gland. Okay, let's take a zoomed in version of my adrenal gland. So just going to focus with this little triangle up top. All right, so there is a zoomed up version of my adrenal gland. Just like for the kidney, this might have a protective covering on the outside, so a protective sac. There's a piece of it right there. We call this guy the adrenal capsule. Capsule that covers the adrenal gland. And also, just like for your kidney, there are two main regions. The outer region, this outer region, let's put a 1 here. This is the adrenal cortex. Adrenal cortex. The inner region, again, just like in the kidney, the middle part, we call this the adrenal medulla. Adrenal medulla, just like for your kidney. And your adrenal cortex actually has 3 layers. Let us quickly discuss these 3 layers, starting from the outside. So we know the most outer layer is the capsule. This is going in the direction of outer. After that, the first zone is called zona glomerulosa. Glomerulosa. And the hormones secreted here are for salt balance, salt and mineral balance. An example of a hormone produced here, so example, is something called aldosterone. So this also acts like an antidiuretic, but it's a little bit different in function than ADH. So this also goes to the collecting duct. We know this is part of a nephron. The nephrons are in the kidney, so this hormone will eventually go to the kidneys. What this hormone does is we are going to increase sodium absorption. Increase. Sodium is Na on your periodic table, or I should say reabsorption, absorption. When you increase solutes into the interstitium, this makes the environment hypertonic. Which means water will be more attracted to this interstitium. Basically means it's going to leave the nephron so it can be reabsorbed. So now we have more H2O absorption. So it functions has the same final effect as ADH, but the process is a little bit different. But here's one example for hormone zona glomerulosa. Okay, going deeper. Next is zona fasciculata. And the hormones here are responsible for metabolism. So breakdown of our macromolecules. And I'll give an example of that. So breakdown of proteins, breakdown of fats, and breakdown of our sugars or carbohydrates, of our carbs. That's one function for the zona fasciculata. After that, the last zone is called zona reticularis. And this secretes hormones known as androgens, or the sex hormones. They're responsible for secondary sex characteristics. So in males, for example, so secondary sex characteristics. And they also influence sexual behavior, among other things. Influence sexual behavior. And after that, we have finally reached the middle, which is the adrenal medulla. So again, this was the inner layer here. And this is going to secrete a hormone known as adrenaline. And this is the same thing as epinephrine. They both mean the same thing, but the roots come from a different language. So adrenaline, same thing as epinephrine. Adrenaline is going to stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. This is our fight or flight responses. So if you have to, fight for your life, or if you're running away, you want to activate certain body parts while turning off the ones that aren't useful at the moment. So resting and digesting function, we're going to turn that off for a sec, because it's not that important if we're trying to, run for our life. And adrenaline / epinephrine is going to inhibit the other system we just spoke about, the parasympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic nervous system. And this commonly called the resting and digest function. So again, this isn't so useful to us when we're running for our lives or, fighting. So here's what the adrenal medulla does. Okay, here is a histology, but I won't have you be responsible for these zones. Okay, now for the pancreas. Pancreas has both endocrine and exocrine function. We mentioned the exocrine function before. Exocrine, these are the acinar cells. These are the acinar cells, and they're going to secrete digestive enzymes to the small intestine. And I've done a whole video on this before. You can watch it if you'd like. Digestive enzymes to the duodenum of the small intestine. Okay, the endocrine part, these are the islet cells. We have, in the islet cells, we have alpha cells. We also have beta cells, and there are other types, but we'll just focus on these two for now. Alpha cells are going to secrete a hormone called glucagon. Beta cells are going to secrete a hormone called insulin. Okay, and then the one way I remember which one secretes which, here's the Greek letter alpha, and there is an A in glucagon. Okay, so why do we call this endocrine? Why do we call this exocrine? So let's do exocrine first. So this prefix exo means outside. So the acinar cell chemicals are going to the outside of the body. But that might be confusing for students initially, but I'll try to explain this. So our digestive system, starts with our mouth and ends with the anus. So here's this opening and here's that opening. Connecting them is the entire digestive system. And then everything else on the side would be the rest of your body parts. Your organs, your extremities, your hands, your arms. So everything on the outside here is, the rest of your body. So if you notice here that entering here, it's still on the outside. There is no kind of like covering. And then same here, this is still, exposed to the environment. So this is why we call the inside of the intestines the outside, because it's technically outside of your body. Because it's exposed to the environment. Exposed. So this is why we call the acinar cells sending chemicals to the small intestine exocrine, and the endocrine means inside. This goes to your bloodstream. Endo means inside, inner, internal. This is going to send chemicals to our bloodstream. Okay, and here is a better image of that. Notice how it's exposed to the environment. We have a few things that actually exit. Okay, now let's talk about the alpha and beta cells, the endocrine part. So the endocrine part. Again, these are the islet cells. And I mentioned two types. We have alpha and we have beta. Alpha secretes a chemical known as glucagon, and beta secretes chemicals known as insulin. So what do these guys do? Glucagon is going to raise the glucose level in blood. We call that the blood glucose level. Blood glucose level. Insulin does the exact opposite. Is going to lower the glucose level in your blood. We call that blood glucose level. Blood glucose level. Okay, so we'll do a demonstration of how this works in the next video, but I guess I can get started. So here is my intestinal tract, and we know it's bordered by cells. And we just ate a carbohydrate-rich meal, so we have glucose in the digestive tract. We want to get this glucose into our cells. So step one, just like before, your body detects a high blood glucose level, or in your intestines or circulatory system.